Welcome to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. It is unfortunate that we have to discuss Afghanistan's negative approach to Pakistan's second evening running. This time, however, the discussion is pegged on the alleged brief abduction of the daughter of Afghanistan Ambassador Najibullah Ali Khail last Friday. According to Silsila Ali Khail's initial statement, she was abducted and tortured and became unconscious and later went to F9 Park in Islamabad, from where she called for help and an embassy car picked her up. Her second official statement contradicted some of the details in her first statement. Given the sensitivity of the issue, Prime Minister Imran Khan had told Islamabad police and other intelligence agencies to close this case ASAP. Speaking at a presser on Monday, the Islamabad police chief gave details of how the evidence collected so far contradicted the statements by Ms. Ali Khail that she was abducted and tortured. The probe involved review of over 700 hours of video footage from official as well as private surveillance cameras, and interrogation of some 220 people by about 350 officers. The police has visual and technical evidence of the entire route and the stops made by Ms. Ali Khail. However, President Ashraf Ghani chose to recall the ambassador and other diplomats, despite assurances by Pakistan that the diplomats are safe and Pakistan is prepared to share the evidence with the Afghan side. Pakistan also made clear that it will welcome an Afghan investigation team to Pakistan. There are other issues in the case, but I shall leave them for our discussion. I'm joined by Ambassador Durrani, a former diplomat, Dr. Rifat Hussain, Head Department of Public Policy at the National University of Science and Technology, and Brigadier Ghazanfar Ali, a former military and intelligence officer. Let me begin with Dr. Hussain here. Dr. Hussain, as I said, second evening running, and you were part of the panel for the first program also, in which we discussed the unfortunate toxicity that has seeped into this relationship, and unfortunately for which one has to largely blame some of the Afghan officials. So this new episode, according to the police, and as a matter of fact, I was talking to some sources there after the presser, and they said, well, we are prepared to share this with any Afghan team and with any independent investigation team, because this is technical evidence that cannot be refuted. So give me your thoughts about what you how you evaluate this particular episode.
Thank you so much, Ejaz. My view is very simple, that this is a very unfortunate incident, and I hope that this is a one-off thing. But the Ghani government has chosen to act in haste, and they have recalled the ambassador and the other senior staff from Islamabad at a very critical juncture, for which we need to have diplomats, posted in each other country, regardless of the tension between the two sides, because the Doha peace process, even though the latest round has concluded, but that does not mean that we should not be monitoring the situation. And without the presence of the ambassadors on either end, it would be very difficult for Pakistan to reassure the Kabul regime that that we are looking at this incident, and we are trying to conduct a very mature, very responsible, and very professional probe. And I recall that the Pakistan's ambassador to Kabul has also come back for consultations, and I do not know how long his absence.
But the Foreign Office is that he is here for Eid holidays, but of course, obviously, there are going to be consultations also. But stay with me, Dr. Hussain. Let me pull in Brigadier Ali here. Brigadier Ali, as an intelligence officer. Now, here's the thing. The presser says that the police has evidence which contradicts the two statements given by Ms. Ali Khail. Now, as per normal procedure, if the issue were not so sensitive, if the person alleging abduction and torture had not already left, I'm assuming that the police would have reverted to her, said, well, here's the evidence, this is your statement, and of course also grilled her or investigated this more in terms of what the truth is now, that is something which presumably we cannot do. So in the absence of that, what else can be done in order to irrefutably determine that Ms. Ali Khail's statements, unfortunately, could not be verified?
Actually, the onset of the incident and the report made about the incident, FIR registered by Ms. Ali Khail, has a lot of loopholes. I do not want to say that Ms. Ali Khail is telling something wrong, but whatever statement she has given, it is not corroborative with each other. Now, if blame on Pakistan agencies or Pakistan police relates to law and order and relates to kidnapping of a woman for a limited period of time, there is a kidnapping which could have lasted for a night. There is a kidnapping which could have lasted for more than that period. There is a kidnapping due to which some demands could have been placed. So nothing has happened in that way. The movement of Ms. Ali Khail from point A to point B has been indicated by herself. And her visit to the places which were not relevant to her going out of the house, in which she said that she wanted to buy some gift for her mother. So in connection with that gift, the visit to the places is not indicative of the fact that she was visiting those places where such a gift could be bought. Now, what is the situation left for Pakistan or for any intelligence agency in the world? Not for Pakistan, I'm not specifically talking of Pakistan intelligence agency. I say any intelligence agency in the world. If they investigate or the investigators come in between, it's like that if there is a theft in your house and you report to the police comes to the house, and the first question they would ask you, had you locked your door? Where were your valuables placed? Where were you yourself? It doesn't mean that police is blaming you for the theft, but they have to incorporate you in their investigative proceedings. So similarly, the case is here that after the statement, Miss Ali or her father have to face certain questions. Now, in the absence of those questions, if you refuse to cooperate the human asking, there is another reason, another way, and that way is that you technically explore that happening in those incidents. So, once you say that you have investigated, you have interrogated 220 people, you traced all the root of the movement, and there is a 700 hours recording which you have gone through. 700 doesn't mean that you were tracing only Ms. Ali Khail. It means there are cameras installed into Islamabad, and the route which was indicated, on that route you had to undertake the investigation to point out the vehicle or to point out the taxi in which Ms. Ali was traveling. So that is the technical intelligence. In the absence of ambassador or his wife, that is a proof which you can gather, and then you can prove this thing to the claimant that whatever you are saying does not corroborate with your movement through technical intelligence. Now, why has it happened? If you go back into the history, if you go back a little back, you see in Pakistan, an airplane was, Indian airplane, Ganga was hijacked, and it was parked at the Lahore airport. Was the intention of that Ganga being hijacked and coming to the airport? And you see the after effects of that, what happened after that, though Pakistan agencies could not confirm at that point or could not visualize that it is meant for what purpose. It was meant to block your flying route.
Absolutely, the airspace was closed. Of course, the intentions were obviously what became clear when India aggressed against erstwhile East Pakistan. But stay with me, Brigadier Ali, before I go to Ambassador Durrani. So here's what the Islamabad police chief said. He said, we have tracked the full route, ascertained it, verified it. We have all those drivers who drove her around and possess technical evidence corroborating our information. So that version or impression that some incident happened when she took the second taxi is not proven. The driver is there. As per his account, and this is the Islamabad chief, Ms. Silsila left her home in F7 on foot and took a taxi from the neighborhood market for Khadda Market, which is predominantly a workshop area for vehicle repairs. From there, she reportedly took another cab for Sada, a business center in Rawalpindi, where she took a third cab for going to Damne Ko, a resort in Magala Hills. Islamabad, she later rode a fourth taxi to F9 Park via F6. It's also interesting, Ambassador Durrani, I want to get a sense of the sort of diplomatic fallout of this, but it seems somewhat strange that by Ms. Ali Khail's own initial statement, which implied that she's not really familiar with the city, for her to, instead of taking an embassy vehicle with an escort, her security, she decided to, go on foot, hail not just one but four cabs going to different places. So give me your thoughts on what you think of this entire episode.
Well, Ajaz, I think it is an episode which is meant to embarrass Pakistan. I'm not privy to the details, whatever you have said or your previous guests have said. I can go by that, and if I have to depend on that account, then in that case, I think there is something sinister which was already cooked up and then offered to us as a fait accompli. My worry is that it is a replay of 1990s when Pakistan's embassy was attacked in 1995 and it was burned down. And one of our colleagues was killed. The purpose was to kill the ambassador, but somehow it was the victim. The fellow who was killed was a victim of mistaken identity. So ambassador got scared, but he was badly injured, and overall 22 people were injured. And the whole embassy, which is right now at Karte Parwan, which we got from the British just a year ago, got burned down. It was razed to rubble. And I have been there from 2005 to 2009, and it was still in rubble. Only now the ambassador's residence has been restored. So my worry is that by this episode, and Afghan government's immediate reaction was to withdraw their ambassador without allowing the inquiry to complete and the clear picture to emerge. This is something already they have made up their mind, and which is not good. This exercise is meant to pressurize Pakistan, and they think that if Pakistan is out of Kabul, so the things perhaps they can go by their way. And I'm also afraid about our own in Kabul, and there's a likelihood that they may in fact harm our people or our property in Kabul.
Right.
So
right.
This is also there. And the third aspect is that they want to pressurize Pakistan that to do something. Now, problem is that you cannot offer the Taliban to Mr. Ashraf Ghani in a platter. Now, he must realize that this is a game which he, in fact, had started. He was part of it, and now he'll have to finish it. So I think these are the issues which we have to look at it deeply.
Before I go back to Dr. Hussain, just a little explanation with reference to the 95 attack. So the embassy was burnt down, and it was restored and became operational in 2012. It is in Karte Parwan. It is outside of what is known as the Green Zone. In fact, there are just two embassies outside of the Green Zone. One is that of the Russian Federation. The other is that of Pakistan. Karte Parwan is predominantly a Tajik area in Kabul. But the 95 attack was not the only attack on Pakistan embassy. There was another attack in 2003 on the Pakistan embassy, not the building which is now in Karte Parwan and which was attacked in 95, but the building that Pakistan was using as an embassy until this Karte Parwan building was restored. So there have been two attacks that way. Dr. Hussain, Brigadier Ali, referred to something very important with reference to the Ganga case. And of course, why that entire thing happened, and then how and why the Indians closed the airspace. And then, of course, we had to fly, take the route from Sri Lanka, from all the way to Sri Lanka for a pit stop, refueling stop, and then going to then East Pakistan. Of course, as we know that Sri Lanka, the Indians, Mrs. Gandhi was really angry with the Sri Lankans for providing Pakistan that facility. So the point really being, and I mean, and Ambassador Durrani has also mentioned that there are wheels within wheels, and given the toxicity of the relationship, which I talked about in my opening, it seems that we have to be very, very cautious and very careful about how to handle this issue.
Well, absolutely, yes. Pakistan has taken great care. I cannot speak for the Interior Minister, but the Foreign Ministry.
No one can speak. No one can speak for the Interior Minister, unfortunately.
But his account was. His narrative was also challenged by Afghan Foreign Minister when he spoke to Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, in which he called his behavior unprofessional. But that notwithstanding, Pakistan Foreign Office, and I think Shah Mahmood Qureshi has handled it very well, because Pakistan has not only offered a probe and has invited the Afghan team to come to Pakistan so they can look at the evidence themselves and draw their own conclusions. But the larger implication is that if there was a plan to cast aspersions on Pakistan, and you convey the message to the world that Pakistan is not a safe place for the diplomats, particularly for the Afghan diplomats. And if that was the purpose, that they wanted to send a message, I think they'll be very frustrated by the Afghan or the forces who want to further cause a rift between the two countries, would be totally disappointed because of the Pakistan's mature handling of this issue and Pakistan's offer of any kind of cooperation that would be required from the Afghan side. And we will have to see how this would actually pan out. But one thing that I'm very concerned about is not only the adverse implications and the fallout vis-a-vis Pakistan embassy, and I think even though we do not know that whether Pakistan's current ambassador has come for either holidays or for consultations, or it is just, it's a preventive move from the Pakistan embassy, because there have been a couple of large demonstrations instigated in the wake of this incident. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect is very important, is we have to talk about the diplomatic protocol, because the ambassador and his family, they are under they have their own diplomatic immunity, and you cannot call them for investigation, even if the Afghan government refuses to cooperate with us. So the matter stops there. But hopefully there will be a period of engagement between the two countries, and soon I hope that this incident will be put behind, and the two countries will get on with their professional work with each other.
Right. Now, Brigadier Ali, Dr. Hussain is making an important point with reference to diplomatic immunity. Now, here's the problem. You explained very clearly how this works. An incident happens, a police report is filed, a statement is made, and then, of course, the police or whatever intelligence agency or whatever agency that's investigating obviously needs to question the victim, needs to question his or her friends or family, to try and determine, pick up clues and see, what all are, the various options, the various theses or hypotheses. So that beyond a certain point, after her first two statements, which also, as I said in my opening, contradict some of the details, and the technical evidence that Pakistan now has, which contradicts Ms. Silsila's statements. Beyond that, it seems we will not be able to do much, given that diplomatic immunity and also the fact that the family is no more in Pakistan.
There are two things. There's one rider clause into it, the one you talk of the diplomatic immunity. The diplomatic immunity means that you cannot blame somebody, you cannot place a crime on somebody, and in correction of crime, you cannot sentence them. That is the diplomatic immunity. But if a party is an effective party, as it happens in this case, that she says she has been kidnapped, so in that case, you can ask them at least for certain basic question. Here, the diplomatic immunity does not compromise, because you are not blaming them for anything. You are just clarifying the position. So I think that and for that matter, it's not must that the ambassador or his daughter comes to the police station. The investigators themselves can walk up to the ambassador place. If you do not cooperate on the basis that there's something on diplomatic immunity, I think you are avoiding the situation. You do not want to answer the question which are necessary for unearthing such a crime. So here the diplomatic immunity, the question of diplomatic immunity, I think doesn't. If you talk of the diplomatic immunity, then you have to think another thing also. And that is that if you have to move out keeping the situation of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan-America relationship, in Afghanistan, the Taliban advances coming, Ashraf Ghani is speaking against Pakistan, and there is certain environment which is not conducive for Pakistan-Afghanistan relation. In such a case, the ambassador, if his family is moving out, he has to inform the concerned agency, the concerned police station, that my family or mine would be out from this time to this time, so that they can take necessary precautions. Or in that matter, you do not have to use a private transport. Then you have to have transport which is available to your embassy. And if you do not want to do that even, there is a very safe system, Pakistan, in existing Pakistan of calling the taxi around your home, and for whole of the journey you can hire one vehicle. But this has not happened. The second thing is related to this incident. If the Afghan government is not cooperating and Pakistan is telling them to send their own team to explore the situation, though the similar thing happened in Pathankot, where Pathankot Indian blamed Pakistan, sent their own team to investigate the matter there. What did the Indian do there? They did not take the Pakistani team or Pakistani investigation team through the area where the incident had taken place. But Pakistan is offering them, come and see the technical evidence also. This is what the moral victory, this is what the moral or the legal standing you are standing for. So in that case, if the Afghan government doesn't cooperate, you can call some independent investigators. There are independent investigative agencies available which can come cooperate. You can pay for that, and they can give their own finding, so that the whole episode is up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you so much. That was Brigadier Ghazanfar Ali speaking with us. Ambassador Durrani, let's talk about the situation in Afghanistan and the fact that, what we're considering as a knee-jerk reaction by President Ghani seems to me to be not so knee-jerk, in the sense that he probably found an opportunity. And I'm not saying that this entire thing was somehow choreographed. I'm just saying this happened, and so they found an opportunity. And given the unfortunate nature of the relationship, and what Mr. Ghani and his coterie have been saying about Pakistan, he thought, okay, bingo, this is the time to do something to further embarrass Pakistan, or to try and, sell this domestically to his constituency, that all the troubles of Afghanistan are actually traced back to Pakistan. So given that, give me your sense of how Pakistan needs to play this. I mean, Dr. Hussain said We have offered them, okay, come in, look at the evidence yourself. But I think that this is bigger than just this particular episode.
You're right, but I think Pakistan cannot do much as far as Mr. Ashraf Ghani is concerned, because he may have made up his mind, and of course he'll have his own advisors, both internal and external. Now you can draw a parallel also that now we don't have a diplomatic relationship with the Indians. We have downgraded that, and so is Afghanistan now. This is a parallel, and you can very well see that how the game played out. And in my view, I think Mr. Ashraf Ghani, as I said it, that they expect us to deliver the Taliban on a platter without realizing that Taliban have won their, whatever the victories they have got, they have won it inside Afghanistan. And whatever they are now facing is inside Afghanistan. And whatever they have to do would be among themselves, between parties, whether it's Taliban and Ashraf Ghani or the third group, which is, although officially is with Ashraf Ghani, but they are not with Ashraf Ghani. They are opposing him, and they would be very happy if Mr. Ashraf Ghani resigns. He is away from the scene.
This is so even the political opposition from the Taliban, even the political opposition. There are lots of people who want Ashraf Ghani to step down. But thank you so much. That was Ambassador Asif Durrani speaking with us. Very quickly before I wrap up, Dr. Hussain, any final thoughts?
Ijaz, I think this requires yet an attempt by Pakistan at the highest political level to get Ashraf Ghani engaged as long as he remains in power, because I think his days are numbered, and he is the one who is suffering from this tremendous vulnerability that I had referred to in my previous interaction with you. But I think Pakistan doesn't lose anything because the incident unfortunately happened inside Islamabad. It involves a diplomat and his family, and therefore the onus is on Pakistan to find out all the clues and where things might have gone wrong. So I think it is imperative that Prime Minister Imran Khan should pick up the phone and talk to Ghani, so that they are left with no excuse that Pakistan.
That's a good suggestion. The foreign already has spoken with his counterpart, but yes, I think the Prime Minister also perhaps needs to do that. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Rifat Hussain speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss how governments, including the right-wing Hindutva government of India, used an Israeli-developed spyware to spy on journalists and other dissidents. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. A consortium of investigative organizations have unearthed how authoritarian governments on 4 continents used hacking software sold by the Israeli surveillance company NSO Group to target human rights activists, dissidents, journalists, lawyers, and other professionals across the world. The investigation suggests widespread and continuing abuse of NSO's hacking spyware, Pegasus. Pegasus is a malware that infects iPhones and Android devices to enable operators of the tool to extract messages, photos and emails, record calls, and secretly activate microphones. Detailed analysis of the data indicates that the governments of Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Hungary, India, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Morocco, Rwanda, UAE, and Saudi Arabia all selected journalists as possible surveillance targets. In India, at least 38 journalists, mostly considered critics of the current right-wing government of Mr. Narendra Modi, were targeted. Presumably, this is against India's laws. We tried to reach out to the journalists on the list for this discussion, but those who replied to our invitation said they could not speak about this. At least 2 indicated that there is an environment of constant surveillance and fear, and they could get into trouble. Moreover, investigations reveal that India used the spyware to target the cell phones of Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and certain other officials. To discuss the use of the Pegasus spyware as well as the politics behind such acts by governments, I'm joined by Pierluigi Paganini, a cybersecurity and intelligence expert. Asad Beg, journalist, computer engineer, and founder of Media Lab, Pakistan's first incubator and accelerator for tech-based digital media startups, and Gurshabad Grover, senior researcher at the Center for Internet and Society. Thank you so much. Let me begin with Pierluigi. Pierluigi, I want you to walk us through this. This is a 101 for the non-tech people. How does this thing work? What do you call a zero-click vulnerability? Because the general thinking is that, unless you take physical possession of a device and then install something, there's no way in which you can hack through encrypted apps like WhatsApp and Signal and the rest of it. But this particular spyware seems to do that pretty easily.
When we speak about zero-click vulnerability, we are speaking about a vulnerability that could be exploited without any user interaction. What does it mean? It means that I can simply send a message to the victims. A message could be also hidden to the victim itself, and just receiving that messages could allow attackers to compromise the device. So in the underground market, such kind of vulnerabilities is very important because it is used in very targeted attacks, and it is also used by surveillance firms that include the exploit within their software in order to remotely compromise the device of the target.
Right. So the NSO group says that it only sells the spyware to governments, so it doesn't sell to anyone outside the governments, and only for counterterrorism or crime-fighting reasons. And it also says that there is a monitoring mechanism through which it ensures that the spyware is not misused. However, what has been unearthed so far clearly shows that that is not the case. So give me your thoughts, since you look at these things and you write about these things. Do you think the NSO is just trying to bluff its way through this scandal? How do you look at it?
The problem is that in many cases, rogue customers like regimes and also oppressive governments and also cybercriminal groups could leverage a networks of a proxy organization. This means that these organizations acquire the licenses from the NSO group and resell them in a chain of organization in order to hide the transaction. Of course, I have to tell you that anyway, the developers of the surveillance software have a specific idea of where the software is executed and who is using the software. So the problem is probably NSO group was aware in somewhere that its software was used worldwide by oppressive governments.
Right. So the WhatsApp CEO says that they're going to sue NSO. Now, can they do that? That's one question. And secondly, the final question, given the development of these spywares, what can people do? I mean, most of the people who are using this, the journalists, dissidents, teachers, lawyers, they're not technical people. They don't have the wherewithal to actually figure out what's going on. So how should these people react to this?
I have a bad news for you. If you are the target of such kind of software, you can do nothing. Why? Because this kind of software always uses specific exploit that target vulnerabilities that are unknown to the vendor themselves and to the software application. This means that the attacker uses a specific vector within the software in order to control the systems. And there is no way to discover such kind of attacks. That's why if you are a common people, you have no chance to detect the attacks. Anyway, in this specific campaign, we always have seen that targets are also members of the governments, heads of countries. Well, in these cases, secret services and specific government experts have to continuously analyze the mobile devices of the politicians, of any kind of person of interest, in order to search for the presence of what we call indicator of compromise. This means the presence of the spyware on the device. And another problem that we have said before is that the attackers are using zero-day exploits that could be effective without any user interaction. And these make such kind of software very dangerous.
Right. Thank you so much. That was Luigi Paganini speaking with us. Gurshapad Grover, that's pretty bad news, actually, that there's nothing that we can do about it, unless at some point we decide somehow to develop the capabilities of top hackers and actually begin to do forensic analyses on our devices every second, third day. And this is true. I mean, so the governments can do this, and in this case, it's ironic that the consortium talked about authoritarian governments, and then we find the name of India in that list, which, of course, technically speaking, is a democracy. So give me your thoughts on, and as I said in my opening, this also presumably is against many laws of India. So give me your thoughts on this entire sort of data that has come out, the journalists that were targeted by the government.
I think the legal framework in India, in some ways, actually supports such broad powers of the government. So if we look at the Information Technology Act in India, it has a specific provision that allows the government to intercept and monitor communications. And it has been criticized for years for having no procedural safeguards. So the government officer that is in charge of this need not go to a judicial officer or to the court to actually get sanctioned for this sort of interception. However, this particular attack, the use of Pegasus, actually goes one step further. It involves hacking of the end devices, which I've argued before is actually illegal under the same act, the Information Technology Act. So because the surveillance framework in India operates under such secrecy and has no visibility to the parliament or to the judiciary, the government can get away with lots of egregious and unaccountable forms of surveillance. And this problem is not new, of course. The Information Technology Act that I'm referring to was passed in 2000. And what we see is that this is not just a problem about the digital aspects of things. It's that lots of surveillance and censorship mechanisms in India suffer from such weak procedural safeguards. So this is a legacy problem. But of course, under this new government, what we're seeing is the increasing weaponization of national security laws and national security grounds to target journalists and dissenters. And really the Pegasus, Snoopgate, the recent revelations are a combination of those trends that we've seen. The abuse of surveillance powers to target journalists and dissenters, and the abuse of weak procedural safeguards to do this all in secrecy.
All right. Shabad, I have another question for you, but let me welcome Arvind Rajagopal, who's Professor, Department of Media, Culture and Communication at New York University. Professor Gopal, thank you for being with us. I'll be back with you. Gurshapad, as I said in my opening, we tried to, and frankly, quite a few of the names of the journalists who were targeted in India are basically friends. I mean, I've known some of them for years and years. So we wanted to get their views on this also. But frankly, no one was prepared to come on the record. So there's a sort of environment of fear. Now, if you combine that with what is going on with these capabilities and also the laws that you're talking about, then it's not just a double whammy, it becomes a triple whammy.
You're absolutely right. And, once these forms of surveillance are secret, they're just used for information gathering. Now that this is out in public, I am sure that lots of people are even vary in how they are communicating and what stories they're covering, especially journalists. of course, the silver lining in this cloud is that the more attention that is brought to these issues, the more chances of reform are there in our laws. Now that we do have information about such surveillance happening, these individuals can go to a court, challenge inappropriate forms of surveillance. And it is truly unfortunate that some of the great journalists that have been potentially targeted by the government have developed great work, have covered many extremely important stories in India. So one hopes that such stories actually inspire everyone to take a more critical stance towards state powers of censorship and surveillance rather than be more wary in what they cover.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is literally the la creme of Indian journalist community. But let me pull in Professor Rajagopal here. Professor, how do you look at this? I mean, this is, of course, earlier, before you joined us, I was talking to a cybersecurity expert, and I asked him, I said, what can the non-techies do about this? And he said, I have bad news for you. There is nothing you can do, zip, zilch, and zero. So there's this whole sort of idea of the big brother redefined in a digital sense.
Well, it's very unfortunate. What we are witnessing is that the information revolution is turning into a counter-revolution even before it's actually arrived in some of the newer countries to develop and so forth. We are experiencing a counter-revolution just when we thought we were going to have an information revolution. And now, if you look at the details of this process, it's extremely international, right? The NSO group that has prepared this spyware, these are three young fellows who were just out of the US military a few years ago. They are modeling their firm on the NSA, right? Now, we know that the Israeli military shares top secret surveillance technology with the United States. So there's an international network here. Who are they going to be answerable to, right? So we have the Indian government, the Pakistani government. These are governments that are end users, consumers of products made by foreign private entities. Who is going to be the judge in this process? Who do we appeal to? It has to be an international process. I think this is what Urshavad is saying. There needs to be a global, if you look at the process by which this story became public, it was an international effort, coordinated across 18 countries, massive effort by private parties. There has to be a process of sort of awareness raising. It's difficult. Yes, absolutely. We should be very careful not to be over-optimistic about it, but the scale of the challenge before us is staggering. That's what I would say. And we are looking to see there are fronts developing in this struggle. Yes, the media is one front. We have to acknowledge that. Media are flying the flag of popular resistance, so to say. Not all of them, but some parties within the media. The governments and private corporations are really hard to distinguish from each other. They're very capable of working very closely in alliance with each other, leaving the majority out. So the majority, their sympathies, their support is being bid for by both sides, right? By private entities seeking to surveil, and other entities such as yourselves, private media, that are drawing attention to these flagrant violations. Now, in the case of India, we have a government that initially was a leader of the non-aligned nations. It was a leader in recognizing Palestine, in opposing Israel. Today, we find that same government is deeply allied with Israel, replicating Israeli tactics, Israeli strategies, and at the same time, a nation that had won its independence, 1947, is increasingly resorting to colonial-era laws of sedition, colonial-era laws of surveillance, which have really very poor standing in terms of the quality of law that they represent, right? Very poor standing, and would not pass muster with any kind of proper constitutional scrutiny, but that process of scrutiny is elusive at present.
Right. Excellently explained. It's extremely unfortunate. And of course, I mean, people like Noah Harari, Shoshana Zuboff, and many others have talked about the fact that this digital revolution, which, you rightly said, even before it has arrived, there's a counter-revolution, is unlikely to enhance liberties and freedoms. It's actually pushing us towards a totalitarian way of looking at things. But thank you so much. That was Professor Raja Gopal speaking with us. Asad Beg, you've been listening in on this conversation very patiently. Give me your thoughts, what you think in terms of, I mean, this has been brilliant investigation by the consortium. And of course, Amnesty and another organization also first came up with this and then gave this stuff to other media organizations. But I also want to get your take on the massive hacking attempts by Indian hackers against Pakistani officialdom and what we find in the data with reference to the hacking of the Prime Minister's cell phone and the cell phones of some of the Pakistani officials.
Thank you, Jaz. I think it's very important. Also, most of what I wanted to unpack has already covered, so that's great. And I would like to reinforce the point of Grover, which I also wanted to highlight in this conversation, was the fact that what happened here was not surveillance, but the hacking of devices. Now, the hacking of devices has a very specific connotations, and it's described as an action very specifically in the laws. And it's not surveillance specifically. So what happened here was basically crime as it constitutes according to the laws of Pakistan, India, and many other countries. And obviously, the way it happened was also important. But one point I would also like to bring into this conversation of how this incident will now tilt the balance of power, or how this one incident will actually supposedly start a new arms race, because this is exactly what it is, right? Surveillance technology that are essentially used now to further political agendas of the state. And now this fact has come out in the air that India has a certain technology. And now my fear is that this is going to sort of start a new kind of arms race in the region. And in a time when everyone is trying to focus on their own state affairs, because clearly we are going through a pandemic and so on. And this specifically is, I don't think that this is a time that we need to get into this race once again. But the point is that in many ways, I feel the states will be pushed into this race now. And so this is one dynamic that we need to also discuss. Frankly speaking, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have that political acumen to predict what's going to happen and how the countries in the region will respond to it. But my fear is that this will start a new kinds of arms race that neither of the countries in the region can afford at this point in time.
Right. Quickly back to Gurshabad Grover. So Gurshabad, here's the thing. As Asad Beg said, he would like to see how the international community responds to this. But my point is, and very quickly because I've almost run out of time, that, this is nothing new. I mean, in the sense that what did Snowden say? I mean, Snowden's revelations. I mean, the United States was doing that to Americans. So it seems to me that this is something which the governments are increasingly inclined to do. And so this seems to me to be a process or a process of sorts, in the sense that, the civil society and those who have the tools to investigate will constantly keep a watch on what the governments do.
Precisely. I think the point about international cooperation and law is very important in this debate. First, on the aspect of sovereignty and human rights and surveillance, I think the European model is a model to look at, where they clearly state that if another state is disregarding the privacy of people in the jurisdiction, and this has been affirmed by the European Court of Human Rights as well, that their ability for data transfer should go down. So, right. So, as you rightly said, the USA has been engaging in extraterritorial surveillance without proper safeguards, and therefore, European countries are now less likely to have data transfers with them. So that sort of international leverage will discourage countries from engaging in extraterritorial surveillance. And we do have the tools in international law when we talk about human rights. Human rights apply to states. They have to respect human rights of people that are under their effective control. So we have to use the sort of language that already exists to advance rights respecting position.
Right.
The second point about international cooperation in this debate is very, very important, because NSO claims that they only sell to state actors, which is true. They also sell to Western democracies that ostensibly have stronger rule of law systems. But the fact is, any country engaging in this market is creating a dangerous system. And I would just reiterate the position of the former UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression, David Kai, and we should call for a moratorium on trade of zero-day exploits and vulnerabilities, because this is creating a dangerous market and aiding states in curbing civil liberties and encouraging censorship and surveillance.
Absolutely. I suspect that is not the last we're talking about this. And for all the wrong reasons, we are probably going to, I'll probably be going to be talking to you once again. But thank you so much, Gurshabad Grover. Thank you, as always, to Asad Beg. This is all from In Focus tonight. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.